Hello. Now, this is a special story because if you don't know, it's Lad's birthday today. So I've prepared a little treat for him. The title of the story is Lad's First Game. In truth, it wasn't his first game at all, but it was the first time he was going to see the team he truly supported. The colours he wore right from birth, his dad's favourite team. A team they cheered on together, singing songs and the players they pretended to be when having a kickabout in the garden. Years of membership and ticket ballots brought little success. Well, none actually. Dad always telling Lad, "We'll try again next time." But it was evident from his deflated face that Lad was not hopeful. Would he ever get the chance to see his team? One day, sat at the table, Dad's phone made a sound. A message had been received. I'll leave it till later, Dad thought, not knowing what joy this one single message would bring to both himself and his bestest little pal. It was a dream come true message. Unable to attend themselves, they asked Dad and Lad if they would like to attend. Just a very heartfelt gesture. Let me think about it for a minute, Dad thought. It wasn't even a minute. It was for about a millisecond. Of course they would love to go. Lad was over the moon, and as the anticipation and excitement grew over the next week ahead of the game, Lad was practicing his best singing voice, making sure he knew all his favourite songs off by heart, while Dad was busy making other arrangements. Boring! Lad's first game was no ordinary game. This was going to be the FA Cup final. The big day arrived, and both of them were bouncing with excitement. Lad was singing in full voice as he got himself ready. He may even have woken up the neighbours. He was that loud. When they and their best furry friend, who was staying at his favourite doggy hotel for the day, were ready, they got into the car. Off they went, with Sparky wagging his tail as the car neared Ben's pad. The dog knew exactly where he was going and was almost as excited as Dad and Lad were about their own adventure. The door to the doggy hotel opened, and their furry pal shot off straight away to go and play with his four-legged friends, not even so much as looking back. Bye then, Sparky. But it was time to hit the road. Wembley awaited. The pair arrived early so they could soak in the atmosphere and even made it into the designated fan zone. Lad thought this was great as he stuffed his face with a burger before joining in with the singing. Yes, more singing. He was simply having the best time. Eventually, though, the area got super busy, and being so little, poor Lad couldn't see anything anymore. So Dad decided it best to leave the fan zone and stand on the walkway outside the stadium overlooking the area instead, so his little mate could see and be more comfortable. Lad thought this view was great. Now he was looking down on the mass of bodies below him, rather than looking up and seeing nothing. Oh, and he carried on singing with the football choir as well, of course. Minutes ticked by. The game was getting closer. The tension was building. Then the ticket gates opened. Having already bought a programme, Dad and Lad made their way inside the stadium to find their seats, or at least where they were meant to sit anyway, as who knew how much sitting was actually going to take place when the match started. The view was great. The pitch looked amazing. It was real. Lad was going to see his team. It was amazing, and he was buzzing. As there was still some time before the big kick-off, the big mate little mate duo went in search of some refreshment. With a bag of crisps and a fizzy drink, after all it was a special day, Lad decided not to go back to the seats straight away. Instead, he just plopped his bottom on the floor inside the stand to read his programme, and join in the singing, of course, as people gathered inside the stadium. Dad and Lad took to their seats before their team's warm-up was finished, Lad pointing out all his favourite players, reeling off statistics he had read in the programme, and looking around the stadium in amazement. It wasn't long now, and Lad was getting nervous, as he told Dad that his hands were getting rather sweaty. It was finally time, as the players took to the pitch, to the roars of 90,000 people inside the stadium, one side blue, the other side a sea of red. Lad simply could not contain himself as he beamed the biggest of smiles. After all the pre-match routines concluded, it was time for kick-off, which always draws an extra roar from the crowd at every game as the action begins, the wait finally over, and fans let out all that built-up anticipation. It was game on now. The game itself was tense, swinging one way and then the other, oohs and ahs from both sets of fans. Lad was fascinated and completely immersed in the action. Half-time came with the score at 0-0. Phew! It was time to catch one's breath, have a drink to wet the vocal cords that were already starting to croak like a frog from all the singing. The pair chatted. Lad kept saying, "Thank you, this is awesome, the best day ever," etc., etc. I think he was happy, even just a little bit. Before he knew, half-time was over. The second half was about to begin. Just like the first, it was very tense, and as the minutes ticked by, both sets of fans became increasingly nervous as they tried to encourage their team to score what could just be the winning goal. Ultimately, though, the game finished 0-0. It was heading for extra time. 90 minutes of football soon became 120, with no goals, no nails left, and voices now really croaky. The winner was going to be decided by penalties. Lad squeezing Dad's hand for reassurance, I think more for his big mate's benefit than his own. It was tense, and Lad said he couldn't watch, but was clearly peeking through his fingers. With one miss each from the first 5 penalties, it was now sudden death. No second chances. If one team scores and the other misses, game over. Goal. Goal. Miss. Now was the chance to win the cup for his team and make Lad's first game even more special. As the penalties were being taken down the other end of the pitch, it was a little tricky to work out who was taking it initially, as this would be penalty taker number 7, and that was all it needed. Tsimikas, the Greek scouser, made no mistake, as the red half of the stadium erupted with delight. The blue half, in dismay, shock, and stunned silence. Lad, though, was going absolutely bonkers, jumping up and down, singing, dancing, hugging anyone he was in touching distance of. He was shaking. He was so happy, all that adrenaline running through his little body. Dad knew that he was going to be buzzing for quite a while. When it came to the trophy lift, the blue half of the stadium was empty, as desolate as a desert. Not a single soul had left the sea of red at the other end, though. Eventually, as the players began to disappear down the tunnel, It was time to leave the stadium. Smiles on their faces, and make their way back to the car, ahead of the journey home. The start of the drive back was a slow but joyous one, as traffic crawled, horns honking, flags waving, and people singing. For the winning fans, it was truly an experience, with Lad reciting all the events that had taken place so far that day. His mouth wouldn't stop moving. As the roads cleared, bellies began to rumble as darkness began to fall. By the time they ate, it was really dark. With tummies now full, the last leg of the journey became a rather silent one. After all the excitement and the adventure he had had, Lad fell asleep. He was one very tired little boy. But what a day! What a dream come true! And best of all, Lad, I got to spend it with you. Happy birthday, little pal. Love, Dad.